It's the experience is what we provide as a service, right? It's what we actually sell, because it doesn't matter if you're on the GC side or the owner's rep, or if you're like Dylan, my co-host, and you're on the design side. We don't set the pricing, right? We're not setting what a building costs to build, right? The market does that, and our fees, they fluctuate a couple points from the next guy, but they're all generally in line. So at the end of the day, we're not really selling a product; we're selling the experience.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Graves, and welcome back to the Theater Mentors podcast, where we talk with industry experts to help cut your construction management curve in half. My co-host each week is Kyle Grandell. What's going on, Kyle?
Hey, Matt, and also welcome, Matt.
This week's guest is Matt Vetter. By day, he's the president of Schafer Construction, based out of the Detroit area, and by night, he's a co-host of the Construction Corner podcast. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Matt and Kyle. I'm glad to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
So for those out there that don't know who you are, can you give us a brief background of yourself?
Yeah, so I'll be real brief. I mean, I've been in construction in some form or another for the better part of 26 years now. Started building houses when I was in high school. Kind of bounced around between some different residential gigs. Made it to the commercial space in the mid, around 2008, 2009, right when everything was awesome. And anyways, now I'm the president and owner of Schafer Construction. We're a true design build firm. We're based in Brighton, Michigan, which is southeast Michigan, about an hour from Detroit. We build everything other than single family homes.
Did you made a switch from residential to commercial? You said 0809. Was it an economy thing that forced you over?
Yeah, so I was I put myself through college with the company I owned at the time. We did a lot of, I call it smaller scale residential, so decks, garages, finished basements. In the Michigan market, Detroit especially, the big three automakers dictate everything. And so at the time, I mean, we were doing finished basements, $250,000 finished basements, where these people would just hand me a credit card and say, rock and roll, make it awesome. And it was fun, right? I had full creative latitude, and but just before everything kind of took a turn sideways, those guys started drying up real fast, and it was like they almost knew what was coming. And so, anyways, long story short, I had an opportunity. I met some folks, and the option was there to make a move and start a company in the commercial realm doing consulting. Really, I did like project management, estimating, supervision for hire. Built all around the country, and it was just it plopped in my lap, man. So I jumped on the opportunity and never looked back.
That's awesome.
Hey, Matt, how did you get into construction in the first place? That's one of my favorite questions to ask of people, because myself, I kind of just more or less stumbled into it. I did some work with my dad growing up and then just fell in love with it.
Yeah, I mean, people always ask that, and my story's not real romantic. To be honest with you, I had a good buddy in high school who was working with a builder, building houses, and he brought me on board, and it was a crap ton of money. I mean, to be quite honest, that was it, right? It was whatever, I don't even remember now. It was $18 under the table or something, and I was a 17, 18-year-old kid. I had no bills, I had no real responsibilities, so
you were rich.
I was wealthy, man. I was killing it, and I don't know. I fell in love with the sawdust. To be honest with you, I still love the smell. We don't do a whole lot of wood jobs anymore, but I still it gets me all nostalgic when I smell sawdust.
Well, the first thing I did was some framing work, and I still like that to this day because I never did it professionally. So
yeah, we did additions, remodels, new construction. I mean, I say we. For the first 6 months I worked there, I think all I did was move lumber from one side of the site to the other. But, eventually they gave me my own set of bags and the hammer and all that good stuff.
Sweet.
That's funny. That's kind of, I mean, I flipped when I was in high school, I worked for my dad in the underground utility business. And one summer they bought a house, and him and his business partner, we spent all summer fixing up to flip it. And I was 16 years old and didn't know nothing. And I learned a lot that summer, but I always had the shit jobs, right? Like, I I spent, I think, 2 weeks taping everything so that he could spend half an afternoon painting it, like with the sprayer, like, and I was like, man, I spent so much time taping it all, and then like we ripped all the tape off in like, 15 minutes. I'm like, this sucks. And I spent, I think, like 2 weeks sanding the kitchen cabinet. Like, I learned real quick we roofed it. I learned real quick there's some things like, man, I don't ever want to do this again. But
roofing especially, man, it's brutal. I have nailed on my fair share of shingled roofs, and it is just tough work.
Yeah, it wasn't a big house, but in the heat of the Lubbock, Texas summer, it was awful.
I can imagine.
So I figured we'll talk about a few things, but one thing that I really wanted to get into was, you kind of mentioned it in your intro, true design build. What does that mean?
So I'm going to do my best not to swear too much here, because I'll try. Design build as a term has been around for 2-3 decades. But it's bullshit, right? Most companies use design build as a marketing ploy. They put it on their website, they put it on their business cards, but they don't really embody what design build construction ever was intended to be. And it's more of a, design bid with a little bit of input from the GC, and then we build. It's very kind of watered down. So we kind of coined the term true design build about 5 or 6 years ago. And it's a totally different method of approaching the commercial market, where we are the tip of the spear, right? Schafer Construction is the very point at the top. Our clients hire us very, very early. So we will help them find land. We will help them, get everything or get their architecture and engineering consultants on board, take everything through municipal entitlements, permitting. Obviously, we then build it for them. But we really act as a true fiduciary to our clients. And so, it's just a huge difference from I got design build on my wall over here, and we actually do it. And in my mind, most firms don't do it, or don't even know how to do it, frankly.
Yeah, it seems like, again, I think most of the delivery methods, design build, TM at risk, we kind of talked about this the other day when we were having a little chat, like most of them they've been sort of bastardized by the industry, and the owners a lot of times don't really know what they're signing up for. I've seen when they say, design build or TM at risk, and they sign some contract that the contractor gave them, and they don't really understand they're not getting the benefits of that delivery method.
Yeah, and it's too bad, right? Because if you as an owner, as a client, if you do a little research into what, say, design build is, you get this kind of this warm and fuzzy feeling inside of, okay, these guys are going to lead me through it. Well, if you team up with, the average firm, that's not really the case, right? And it's any sort of contracting is just about taking risk and shifting it around, right? It's the hide the peanut game under the walnuts. And in true design build, all of that risk is on us, 100%, right? We take full financial risk for the entire project, including land acquisition. And that's where we kind of can separate ourselves from the pack, because, most of it, the CM at risk or the, design assist areas, it's just watered down. And the GC as an entity, fights as hard as they can to take on the least amount of risk, where we just kind of flip it, and we're comfortable in that market. We're comfortable taking the lion's share of risk, and, there's benefits to us, obviously. But there's also, there's not a lot of firms that can compete on that level.
Hey, Matt, is there, working in the commercial space, are there certain sectors of commercial that you work in that, you see a lot, I would say, more acceptance of the way that you guys operate versus traditional, I'll say traditional design builds? And I'm just asking, I work a lot in manufacturing, and so I see a lot of the traditional, the way that things are right now. And so, hearing how you guys operate is very intriguing to me.
Yeah, and it's a great question. So we build everything outside of single family homes at this point. We don't see a lot of design build really in any fashion in the multifamily sector. That's still primarily architect led, probably for some good reason, maybe not great reasons, but we've seen it and we've done it in everything from light industrial, office products. We've actually figured out a way to do it in municipal projects. We built a community center for a local municipality a few years ago in a true design build format. And it, the way I see it is any product type, as long as you can educate your client on what the hell you're actually going to deliver and how you're going to do it, there's no limit to the product type that you could do a true design build model.
Well, absolutely. And I've been on projects where it's been all different shapes and forms of it, honestly, where they start out doing a design build and the whole thing, then they scope it down and say, oh, we'll just do the shell design build and we're going to design bid build the interior. And before you know it, the whole thing's off the rails.
So. Yeah. And I guess that's the kind of format that gets under my skin. That's why we started doing what we do, because it kind of bastardizes the whole allure of a design build project, right? And there's nothing wrong with the I call it old school too, that, design bid build, the architect led. It's not right, wrong, or indifferent. If you want to go that route, fine, but just know that you're going to get what you're going to get. But if you're going to try and market it as design build and market it as, we as the builder are going to help you as the client through this process, you damn well better do it, in my mind.
Yeah, well, and that also fits along with the way the industry is going with a lot of integrated projects too. I mean, it's almost like a hybrid integrated design build, but really it's like you're saying, true design build. It's kind of what I always thought it was at the very beginning, and then I got really into the project, into the details and the contracts, and I'm like, well, this is not quite what I was expecting, but this is what the owner signed up for, so we'll just do the best we can. Yeah, interesting.
I imagine you spend a lot of time educating owners of really what design build really means and what you're doing and why it's different.
A ton. I mean, I would say almost a majority of my time now in my current role is spent doing just that.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, relationships are what make this industry go around no matter where you're at, or what format you're doing it in. It's all relationship based. But in order for us to be able to sell the service that we provide, clients have to know what they're actually getting. And so you nailed it, Matt. Like it's like I'm a professor some days, right? And it takes an exorbitant amount of time, because especially when you get into sectors where they're not used to it, like municipal work or public work, they don't think like this. They think we need low bid, hard bid type projects. Well, that's not the only way to accomplish that. There are ways to do a true design build project in those municipalities with strict funding requirements, but it takes an extreme amount of teaching, right? You gotta really lead them and show them the way to do it before they can become acceptant of that format.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, just because on my end, in the owner's rep realm, in manufacturing, in the industrial manufacturing, I have a similar fight, but it's a little different. Unfortunately, a lot of my clients are used to CMs that are just, you go out there and hand wave in the field and then somehow miraculously get a project done. And so I do a lot of the same thing, Matt, where I'm trying to educate the owners that, hey, as a CM, I can actually help you on some stuff if you'll let me. There's actually a lot of value we can add on the front end of planning, not just when the shovel hits the ground. It's too late at that point. Like, the project's going the direction it's going.
It's a great point, Kyle. I mean, so much of what we do, the bulk of what we do and the magic that we provide is long before a shovel ever hits the ground, right? It is all in the pre-con. So I'm a pre-con guy by nature, by trade. I have the bulk of my professional experience is all on the pre-con side. So much of the project is decided in that, whatever it is, 60, 90, 120 day period before the boots are even put on.
I want to play devil's advocate for a second, because I love to do that.
Yeah.
What's from your perspective, what's the benefit of taking on more risk and not just being another one of the other design build guys doing it, where they just keep passing the risk back and not wanting to take on anything else?
Benefit to me or the benefit to the client?
Let's say both.
So, the benefit to me is it's easy. We can charge bigger fees. We can charge a larger rate, a higher percentage. And we damn well better deliver, right? Because we have that risk on the line, but and it allows us to have full control of the project, which is, call it ego, call it whatever you want. My team, that's how we function best, is when we are the ones holding the puppet strings for the whole show. And we get to make the calls then too, right? Because when something comes up on site during construction, which it always does, there's not anybody sitting here kind of pointing both ways saying it's not my fault. He did it. We now are like we're going to step in and solve the problem. Mm-hmm. Benefit to the client is also pretty easy. We can do any project in a shorter timeline with less headache and for a lower cost, period. And then we guarantee it. And it's all built on that pre-con side that you mentioned, Kyle.
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of design build experience. I've done a lot of, everybody kind of does different stuff, right? And I don't have a lot of design build, but you have a GMP basically set early on in the pre-con, and then you kind of go from there?
So typically we work on a cost plus fee with a GMP contract. The GMP, it doesn't get established necessarily real early. Sometimes it does. I mean, we've gone to contract before on 3 drawings, a site plan, a floor plan, an elevation, and we, harken back to my pre-con roots, we got very good at conceptually estimating large scale projects. So while that's not our norm anymore, we certainly have done it. But typically speaking, within that 60 to 90 day window of design and entitlements, we'll come back with a set GMP, phase 2 of our contract. That'll guarantee the price and guarantee the schedule.
I got you. I imagine it's a much better, you're talking about the benefits of the owner. I imagine it's a much better experience for the owner too, because I don't know how many projects, we've all been on it, where something goes sideways and the architect's pointed at the contractor, the contractor's pointed at the geotech reports, or geotech guys pointed, everyone's just, playing that game. And so having an owner that can just say, Matt, we got a problem, and have one guy to call, right? And you just make it work.
That's exactly it. We are the single source point of contact for everything from day 0 till the day we hand them the keys. And don't get me wrong, it ends up in a lot of headaches and a lot of, late night phone calls that we probably wouldn't field if we were operating in a different format, but it's, we feel it's worth it.
Yeah, I think so. I think it definitely gives the owner a better final, ultimately you're building, anybody can build a building, right? In theory. So it's really about the experience of how they do it. And, they're going to tell their buddies who are building a building, or they're going to give you a reference based on how the experience went. Not that, they built me a 5-story building, because everybody can do that.
Totally. And, to be quite honest, most of our clients are not repeat builders, right? We do a lot of work for private entities. So, they might build one building ever, but we can rely on them being our marketing department for us. And we may not build a second building for them, but we're going to build one for their friends and their friends and their colleagues. And we put very little into marketing because of that, right? And so, to say everybody can build a building, I agree with you 100%. It's the manner in which you deliver it. It's the relationship you build, and it's just the whole process you create for the client that really has the value.
What trades do you guys do internally, Matt, like self-perform versus partner out with for subcontracts, if there is a standard, I should say?
So we do not self-perform any trade work. We are strictly a paper GC. We set up the deals. We contract all the design and trade work. We provide supervision and management in-house. But outside of that, we team up with specialty contractors for everything.
Very cool.
Do y'all have on your normal job site, because I've seen a bunch of contractors, everybody kind of works it just a little bit different. Do y'all have, I would call it like general carpenters on your crew, just kind of do a little bit of miscellaneous stuff here and there? Or do you strictly have nothing but management?
Both. So typically speaking, it's strictly management and supervision.
Yeah.
We are starting to get into some of the more, we call them general trades up here in our neck of the woods, but same idea. We're starting to look more into that where, some of our guys in-house can do certain, call it minor work.
Right.
And it really depends on the project.
It's almost like the ancillary work, right? They're not actually building the building, but you almost need somebody to I don't know, put up a handrail or to, do miscellaneous oddball stuff.
Yeah, putting door hardware on, putting backing on, mounting TVs, things like that. We're starting to kind of self-perform, if you will, a little bit, but still, by and large, for the most part, we sub it all out.
I gotcha.
A lot of that's, we take on this lion's share of risk for the project, so we've already got this massive load on our shoulders. To start self-performing any real trade work, and I mean that, respectfully, outside of the general stuff, it blows our insurance through the roof, and right now, anyways, we're just not cut out for it. I mean, I would love nothing more than to have a full team, right? Have my carpenters, have my steel guys, and my MEPs all in house all the time, but we're nowhere near that level where we can keep that sort of crew busy day in, day out yet.
Oh, I mean, there's not a contractor in America that has everything in house, is there?
Not many. I think a few of the big guys might try at least, but it's just the nature of the beast. It's so cyclical, right? There's just something's always phased.
You have to diversify yourself a little bit. You can't put all your eggs in the same basket. So.
Well, and kind of where I think Matt's going, there's a lot too. Is it's hard to have that staff and be able to keep them on staff full time and busy, and not sitting on the bench running up your overhead. Because I can only imagine. I mean, even the clients that I see, even the same client owner, if you will, from project manager to project manager, what they want is totally different. What they're comfortable doing is totally different. So it's hard to predict that stuff and staff up for it.
Absolutely. We select our teams per job. I mean, we work with a core group of guys of specialty contractors, but out of that group, we might have 2 or 3 carpenters that we know, like, and trust a lot. And carpenter A might be a great fit for this project, but they're not going to work for this next one because of some relationship quirk or something weird about the scope. So to your point, to keep everybody perfect, right? It's hard, if not impossible.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears for just a second. So I've started following, your podcast, the Construction Corner podcast, and I listened to an episode the other day where I don't remember the whole story, but essentially you were sitting in a meeting. I think it was a city planners meeting or something like that, and somebody said, like, hey, at the end of the meeting, like, hey, I listened to your podcast, and I like your content. And you basically said your heart sunk because you didn't know what their impression was. I just want to share, like, man, I've had the same feeling where people say, hey, I follow you on, because, like, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I share a lot of my thoughts, and I try not to get too controversial, but I like to be authentic, and sometimes I don't agree with everybody, right? And I've had people saying things, say, hey, I follow you on LinkedIn, and I'm like, give me a little bit more context, because I don't know if that's good or bad. Have you had, I mean, you've been doing this a lot longer than we have, obviously. This is going to be episode 8 or 9 or something like that, and I've been doing a newsletter for about 9 months, so I don't have nearly the breadth of content out in the world like you do, but I've seen way more positives than negatives, and I'm assuming you're probably the same.
Absolutely. There is way more positive to getting out there, and it's almost like you're pre-building relationships, right? You're showing people, as long as you're authentic, right? And we talked about this the other day. As long as you're not, BSing everybody, you're kind of introducing people to yourself and your way of doing business and your personality way ahead of time. And whether or not social media or podcasts will ever lead directly to any of us getting a project, I couldn't really tell you, but I can tell you that you go have a meeting with a new person, and the first thing they're going to do, either when you book the meeting or as soon as you walk out of their office, is they're going to look you up. And as long as there's content there for them to find, that's usually a good thing. To the beginning of your comment, there are definitely those times when, and it's happening more and more now. It seems like a lot of our stuff is getting some traction. We've been grinding it out for a few years now. When somebody brings that up in certain settings, it's like, oh hell, what did you read? What episode did you listen to? Because I'm a construction guy at heart, right? There's a lot of times when I get on our show with Dylan and we get pretty fiery, and I let my inner pirate come out. Sometimes, right, wrong, or indifferent. And, we talked about it in the episode, like, as long as you're being real and you're not, trying to play a character, then at the end of the day, who really cares, right? if you don't like me on my content, as long as I'm being authentic, you're not going to like me in person. So if that's your deciding factor, then great. We just saved ourselves a lot of headache. Go find somebody else, and I wish you the best.
That's kind of this podcast. I'm going to kind of morph that a little bit. So this podcast is really kind of aimed towards, we call it the next generation of construction, right?
Okay.
We're really trying to help, people kind of get onto their feet. They're coming into the trades. They're coming into really construction management. Really is kind of what we're targeting towards. There's a lot of people, from all our people who've been listening to it, from all levels of experience. But, that's something, a president of a company can say, oh, yeah, I can speak freely because you're not reporting to anybody, right? Do you have any advice to kind of the people who may, that's kind of my favorite question to ask when we start talking about personal branding, because there's a lot of people, and I've even had people reach out to me on LinkedIn like, hey, man, I really want to start a newsletter like you're doing, or I've got a lot of things I want to say, like on social media, but I'm scared because I don't know what my company's going to think, or I don't know what they're going to think, or they don't want to ruffle up feathers, you have any advice for those guys?
Yeah, twofold. A, I didn't have the presence or put out the content that I do now when I worked for somebody else. And it's not because I couldn't. A, it was a long time ago. But B, there was part of that fear, right? Like, well, what if my boss sees this and it, ruffles the feathers? But I guess what I would say, to the young bloods coming up, don't be stupid, right? Just don't be authentic, right? But don't say anything stupid that you wouldn't say to somebody's face, right? And if you want to be controversial, there's guidelines, right? There's bookends to what is acceptable in any circumstance. It doesn't matter if you're talking about construction or any of the hot topics of the day, right? But if you wouldn't say it to my face or to our client's face, sitting face to face across a real table in a real meeting, not a Zoom call, none of this stuff, you wouldn't say it right to their face, don't put it out on social media. Now, if you're the type of person, though, that would say it, hey, have at it. But keep in mind, there's that caveat. If you do something stupid and you tie my company's name to your burning ship, there's going to be probably a different discussion we're going to have.
Well, Matt, I liked what you said a lot about the authenticity part, being authentic, because especially, as we all know, working in a professional industry, one of the worst things you could do is sell yourself to get the job, and the client gets it, and the experience is nothing like they expected. That's the surest, fastest way to piss them off and make sure you don't get another job from them. So your message is awesome there. Be authentic in your message you're putting out across any platform you do. Realize that anybody could see it, any potential future customer of yours, and ask you about it. And, it doesn't need to be a big deal as long as you're authentic and honest about it. That's my take.
100%, man. And Matt touched on it earlier. It's the experience is what we provide as a service, right? It's what we actually sell. Because it doesn't matter if you're on the GC side or the owner's rep, or if you're like Dylan, my co-host, and you're on the design side, we don't set the pricing, right? We're not setting what a building costs to build, right? The market does that. And our fees, they fluctuate a couple points from the next guy, but they're all generally in line. So at the end of the day, we're not really selling a product. We're selling the experience. And if I tell you that this experience is going to be great because I'm this, mousy pushover of a guy online, and I only talk about fluffy, happy stuff, and then we get going and you meet me and it's completely flipped, and you realize, holy cow, this guy's he's got a mouth that makes my my drunken grandfather blush, and he's opinionated. Well, now you've got this clash, and it's just, you can't do that to people, right? It's you're hoodwinking them. To harken back to the old term, you're absolutely hoodwinking somebody. And if you want to sell an actual proper experience, then you got to be actually properly authentic.
Yeah, well, and this comes back to Matt Graves, something we've talked about, I think, in our previous podcast too, or at least I know you and I have, is about, you don't really know what their true character is until you get into the heat of the project. When you're in that really stressful time and people want to start pointing fingers, that's when you find out who somebody really is. And so, just to your point about being authentic and providing that experience, if you know up front then things are more likely to go way smoother than if all of a sudden you switch personalities when the project gets hard. That's where I've seen people get the most pissed off and where things go off the rails the most.
Totally. Mike Tyson said it best, right? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. But if you can show people what you're going to act like when you get punched in the face before it happens, everybody wins. It goes to like a bigger conversation, right? Life is too damn short. Why would I want to waste time? Why would anyone want to waste time pretending to be someone they're not? There's enough work out there, right? Whether you are in construction or you sell groceries, man, there's enough out there that if you have some drive and some commitment, you can go make a living doing a lot of different things. So go find something you can make a living at being yourself. And we'd all be a lot better off, I think, if more people just did that.
That's right.
I follow Gary Vaynerchuk a lot, and I don't know if you guys do or not, but a lot of what he talks about, he's like, you may be making $150,000 being a CPA, right? But you're miserable. But you'd rather like create a YouTube channel talking about Legos or name it, right? And maybe get that thing built up and make $50,000 or $60,000 talking about Legos, and like your pay obviously is way down, but like you are happy as shit because you're doing what you love to do. And he has a lot of that. Like success is different for everybody. It doesn't always mean your paycheck at the end of the week.
Yeah, I mean, and it's good for people to hear that sort of message from guys like you two and me, right? Listening to Gary Vee or Andy Frisell or Ed Milet, like they have great messages. Don't get me wrong. I follow a lot of those guys, but listening to a dude that's worth $800 million tell you that it's not all about making the money. Well, it's hard to get on board with, but listening to a regular guy saying what you just said, right? You can make decent money and still be happy and still have a good time doing what you're doing. To me, the message resonates more.
I think it's going to help solve maybe the construction labor crisis, if you want to call it that, or whatever, when people are realizing, I think there's a lot of people doing jobs, office jobs that they hate, and they realize, like, man, I can go out and actually do something and build something and fulfills me. And I've seen a number of people actually, because, the more I get involved in LinkedIn, the more I just connect and I start seeing the cross section of the market, I guess, if you will. And there's a lot of entry level people that are obviously 23 years old and fresh out of college and, whatever, but there's a lot of like entry level people who are doing a second career. Like they were a finance person for 20 years and I just hated every day of their life. And they like, I want to get in, and I always like construction. I like building stuff. I like building Legos, and just kind of started. And now they kind of restarted their whole life and whole career because now they're doing something they enjoy doing. Kind of cool to see.
It's very cool to see. And, we do a lot at my company and with our podcast and trying to get youth more interested in the trades again, making the trades cool again. Mm-hmm. But the reality is what you just said. It doesn't have to be the youth. Yes, we need them. We need to be able to build up our farm clubs, and that's a topic for like a 10 shows by themselves. But we also need people to recognize that, right? If you make it down that rabbit hole of being an accountant or a lawyer or a surgeon, I don't care what it is, and you decide you don't like it, you're never too late or too old to flip the script on yourself and try something new. And, construction is an industry that, you guys know it, there's endless opportunities, right? There's everything from sales and marketing to social media to the guy digging the ditches, everything in between. So there's a tremendous litany of opportunity out there for people to make a new start. We as an industry just got to do better at throwing that out there, right? Because people still look at construction as second best, second chance, right? Or first loser type mentality, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, you're right. For a long time it was like if you can't get into college, you either do construction or go to the military. Like that was your failed plan B and plan C. Yeah,
it's absurd, right? When I was in high school, which I guarantee was a long time before you guys, but we had Voc Tech. That was our trade school option. And Voc Tech back then was for the burnouts. It was for the guys and girls who were failing out of high school and couldn't do anything else. Now, I think I mentioned the other day when we were talking, Matt, my oldest is going to be 16 next week. He's got legitimate trade school opportunities coming into his high school. So if he wants to, he can go and get 2-year education as a carpenter while he's still doing his normal high school coursework and graduate with a job, coming out of high school making 4 times, 5 times what his buddies are going to be making, doing anything they're doing. And there's a lot more opportunity now. So
that's awesome. It also helps with that, having that skill. I don't want to say as a backup plan, but it's also something else you can fall back on, or another route you can go to for a while if you're figuring stuff out, keep money coming in the door. But myself, I was an electrician, then I went to school for engineering, and then I was like, I like construction more. So, and I haven't looked back, man. It's been great.
That's perfect, man. Case in point, great example right there.
Yeah.
I was also on UMass the other day. I went into college as a civil engineer, and I realized halfway through engineering school that, like, I don't want to be an engineer. I don't want to be cranking out numbers all day long. I was, I probably didn't listen when they were explaining to me what civil engineering was, but because I was 18 years old and I did what most 18-year-olds do. And anyway, I was looking to transfer, but then I realized I could stay in civil engineering and specialize in construction management, and I did that. But then even then, like, when you graduate, you don't know anything. I graduated, and I remember my first job, they're like, all right, I need you to put together this submittal. I was like, I don't even know what'd you say? A submittal? I don't even know what that means. And they're like, okay, well, can you write us an RFI? I'm like, I don't, you're just speaking French, man. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, it's such a interesting, that's one of the reasons we kind of started this podcast and Kyle, we probably should actually get into a little bit more of teaching what those things mean. That was kind of our idea behind it all, was to really kind of be a resource for that next generation coming up that, even if they went to college, right? I mean, you graduate college, and I didn't go the construction management path, so they may have learned a little bit more than we did. I got, civil engineering, we got a real wide range of a little bit, one geotech, one structures, one this, one scheduling. I mean, I did one scheduling class. You don't know how to build a schedule in one scheduling class. I spent half the time trying to figure out how to turn on P6 or P whatever it was at that time. And even then you couldn't figure out how to do that. So, just even, I don't know why I went on this little rant, but even when you go to formal college, you get out, you still don't know anything. You're still having to go back almost into vocational school of sorts to just learn how to be a construction manager.
You have to, right? I mean, it's on the job training at its finest, right? You can't build a schedule, to your point, having never worked in the field or never at least seen how a schedule interacts on a real project. It's like looking at a architectural drawing all day long and trying to translate that into an actual building, right? Until you actually see the building come up out of the drawing, you have no way. I mean, none of us are mind readers. None of us are that, we don't have superpowers. Like you gotta actually see it and feel it to some degree.
Man, even then, I mean, BIM is so far along now versus 2-dimensional architectural plans, right? But even then, if you're looking at a BIM model, it gives you a lot more details, but until you've seen it get built, it's just ducts floating in outer space, right? It's just stuff in the air, and so you kind of see how it actually all goes together. You've got to have that on the job training.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And the BIM, it's great, but it's also scary if you look at the people technically or typically doing the BIM models, right? If that person came out of the field or came from some version of construction where they actually had to know what was going on, fine. But if that person is fresh out of college with a drafting degree or something, and they just are really good at technology, yeah, they can make a pretty picture and they can make sure that the duct chases don't hit the plumbing runs or whatever it may be. But once you get in the field, then, somebody's got to have that stuff figured out in real world.
Mm-hmm. The best I've seen is I worked for a plumbing and mechanical contractor in a previous life, but they were real far evolved in the BIM world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they did it earlier before really the industry even really woke up to what it was. But the best that they did is they would get the guys out of the field that were 50 years old, 55 years old. They don't want to be climbing ladders anymore. Bring them into the office. But that guy didn't even know how to turn on a computer. But he knew how to build. He knew how to install duct, right? He knew all this stuff. And they'd basically partner him with a 24-year-old kid who understood the technology, but he didn't know how the real world worked, and kind of set them next to each other. And they kind of would feed off of each other. And it was a really good model they had.
That's a perfect way to do it. I've got a good buddy over on the west side of Michigan that is really involved in BIM, and we've had very similar conversations to what you just said, right? That's the perfect way to do it, because not everybody wants to be in the field, right? I mean, just because I'm partial to it, that's how I started. I came up, with broken knuckles and bruised fingers, but not everybody wants that, and they never will. So there is a way to transfer that knowledge, right, from the old timers to the young guys, at least some of it. The average age of a construction worker, depending on who you listen to, is somewhere to mid 40s to mid 50s. So if those people are starting to retire without having a young buck to pass that knowledge to, that's just lost opportunity. It's time, cost of money. It's just a bad scene all around. So if you can marry those two together, professionally, there's nothing bad that can come of it.
Almost a little bit of teaser for our next episode. Next week we're interviewing Corey Fisk. She's I forget her construction management online, I think is the name of her company, but she's got a big push where she's really trying to get those 50-year-old guys or 60-year-old guys that are looking at retirement, but they've got 30, 40 years of experience, right? And trying to show them like a second career or like a career in retirement to basically become a mentor type person and kind of help. It's kind of twofold, right? You're helping that generation of people, but two, you're helping the next generation too by trying to all right, if I can show you how to be a mentor, and now you can come on and you can help out the 20-year-olds and the 30-year-olds and these construction companies that are about to lose a whole lot of experience and knowledge. It's a really, I'm excited for that conversation actually, but it's kind of a cool thing she's doing. I'm
excited to listen to it because that sounds awesome, right? I mean, so many of us, especially if you got an entrepreneurial fire in you, right? The idea of actually retirement, like retiring in the old sense of the term, where I'm just gonna sit down in my easy chair and watch golf, until I'm
every day.
alive. Like that sounds miserable to me. I'd go insane. So, but to have an option like that, where I don't want to go and grind myself every single day like I'm doing now or like I did in my 20s, but to have an option to go and spread the knowledge, keep the industry growing. That's huge, man. That's a great opportunity for somebody.
Well, and hopefully that's kind of one of the main things that we're doing here is, kind of getting that ball rolling, getting the next generations thinking about, when they get into our shoes, what are they going to do? How are they going to help? Because, I mean, to me, that's going to help our shortage. Maybe not now or tomorrow or
lose you?
A few weeks, but in the next few years.
Did you lose him, Matt? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, you've been cutting out a little bit on me, but we're going to have to get with our technical people, which is, I think, Kyle, and make him fix it.
Huh?
Hey, so one thing when we first kind of started talking about you joining us, Matt, one of the topics you threw out, things you would feel comfortable talking about was team building. How do you guys go about, because I'm always really interested in team building, especially and I say that in kind of two parts, because in the construction industry, you can be real siloed. And what I mean by that too is like you've got, say Schafer Construction, but you've got however many projects, and you've got a project team over there, and you got a project team over there, and there's a team there with, it depends on the size, right? It can be 2 to 10 people depending on the size of the project. But then, so how do you guys do team building on a project level, plus bringing all those teams together to team build on a kind of a company level?
It's hard.
It's very hard. That's why I like to ask people how they do it.
It's really, really hard, man. I mean, that's the hardest part of what I do is the people side of it. And, we're real big on our core values and we're real big on our culture. And, we're not perfect at it. I'm not even close to perfect at it. But, we hire based on our core values primarily. I mean, the way I see it is you can teach most anything we do in our industry to anyone with a will to learn it. You can't teach values and you can't teach culture. So as long as the people we're bringing in, mesh with our core values and fit with our culture, then we can teach them what they need, but that helps with that team building, right? And then, the team building starts in our house and then it goes out to those different silos of projects. And keep in mind, I mean, we're a small, pretty lean overhead wise company. There's not a whole lot of us. We're growing, but for me, it's not that difficult theoretically to keep everyone within that same culture and keep that mentality kind of is the beating drum that they all hear. Now, as we continue to grow, or, once we get to certain levels where we've got, 10, 15 of those silos going on at once, it's going to be hard, man. I don't really know the answer to it, right? Because you said it, right? You're physically separated now. And we have that issue with our field guys now, right? Our field guys, our superintendents tend to get kind of that lost on an island syndrome, right? Because they may not see the rest of the office side of us for weeks, if not, a couple months. They'll see a project manager back and forth, but, those guys may not come into the office in a regular situation. So we really try it at least monthly to bring everybody in-house. Everybody comes into the office, and we call it an all-staff meeting. We talk about whatever the hell's going on, but really it's more so just to have some camaraderie, right? Get some conversation going between, my estimator, who may never make it to the field, right? Whether or not he should, have him chatting with our assistant superintendent, right? And it kind of that all around the table, but again, like you mentioned, once you hit a certain level of just head count, it gets infinitely harder to do that.
Yes. And I've seen that with a few different companies I've been with. As they've grown, it's become increasingly harder and harder. It's like you just said, though, it's huge. You can get that assistant superintendent talking to the estimator, and nothing may happen that day other than now they know each other on a first name basis. And if that assistant superintendent's in the field looking at something and he said, hey, I knew that guy, he knew something about plumbing. Let me give him a call real quick and just pick his brain on something. At least you've made just a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of building that camaraderie where now you don't have to be the middle guy saying, hey, y'all go talk. You can kind of start building those relationships. And even if, it doesn't happen after one meeting, it doesn't happen after two meetings, it takes time, but you just start enough times of interacting, people start getting more comfortable, and then all those things can start flourishing on their own.
Without a doubt, man. It's relationship building, right? It's everything we do. We talked earlier about it's building relationships with our clients and our vendors and our subcontractors. It starts at home. And I keep saying at home. I say that in the office. Like, it starts in our core, right? At our core company. And everybody's got different skills and talents, right? And you just got to be able to push out those conversations that kind of expose them, right? Our pre-construction manager right now has a great background in the ceramic and hard tile industry. So we will have those conversations, or my superintendents, if they run into something with our flooring crews out there, they can call our pre-con manager and say, hey, I'm not a flooring guy, so don't quote me, but like, what are we supposed to do with this situation? This floor leveler isn't doing it. What should they be using? And they bounce things back and forth. So it's a cool scenario, but it takes work. It doesn't just happen, like you said, in one meeting, or, because you did some kumbaya, sit around the campfire type thing. There's got to be a organic relationship that is fostered to even get to that level.
100%. Because we're our company I work for, not big. We're big enough where I know most people by first name, but there's only a few people where I would feel comfortable enough knowing them on a personal level to even really maybe even know what their expertise is, right? Like, I may talk with somebody all the time, but again, if I don't know he's the flooring expert, I'm not going to know to call him. So that sort of stuff takes a long time, a lot of relationship building. You've got to be very, very intentional, what I've seen.
Yeah, you have to be intentional about what you want, right? What are you looking to get out of this relationship? Are you looking to, there's a million different things, but you got to be intentional on it. You got to be intentional on everything you do. And as a leader of the company, it's my job to make sure that I'm at least putting my people in spaces and in situations where that intentionality and that relationship building can actually occur. Sometimes easier said than done.
A minute ago, you said you guys hire on core values. I hear a lot of people say that, obviously, almost to the point where it's become a buzzword, or it's kind of became I guess it's called buzzword or whatever. But I guess it's, speaking of easier said than done, have you guys found a way to really figure out what people's core values are consistently?
It is a buzzword. It's bullshit. Not with us, but with most, right? Most firms that I've worked for in the past, it's complete garbage. It's a poster on the wall in the conference room that when they bring clients in, they can say, "Look at our core values. We're great people. This is all us." And then the people leave, and it's garbage. You have to really believe in it, right? It's culture at its finest. It's core values, And so, we hire very slowly on purpose. We meet, we don't have an exhaustive interview process, but the last thing I want to do is bring someone onto the team who's not going to be a fit, right? Getting rid of people is not a fun situation ever. So we make damn sure that we kind of dig into people, into their psyche a little bit. We ask a lot of different questions, right? I don't care about the questions like, tell me about a time when you succeeded. Tell me about a time when, you had a conflict. I'm going to ask questions that we engineer to focus around our own core values, right? We have a list of 5 values that we live by at the company. And through having those kind of directed conversations, I'm going to weed out of you if you're a competitive person, right? Or if you're a problem solver, or if you're, humble and confident, all these things. The rest of those kind of canned interview questions, whatever, they don't mean anything to me. So, and do we get it wrong sometimes? Absolutely, right? It's guessing somebody's DNA at a certain point, right? It's fraught with problems, but it's just the way we've done it. I'd like to say we're pretty good at it. We don't have a lot of turnover, so, something's working. Did I lose you again?
I lost you there at the end, but
Back now.
So have you kind of going full circle in this conversation, kind of started talking earlier about, putting out content, especially the next generation, kind of putting out content, that sort of stuff, and being authentic and true. Have you hired people, or at least got them in the door to interview based on what you're seeing on social media or their content or anything like that they put out? Because I imagine if they're putting out content that basically nails your core values, and if they appear to be authentic, because I can go Google your website right now and put out a whole bunch of content that says I'm your core value guy. But yeah. have y'all made any hires? I don't want to say strictly on that, but with that getting the ball rolling?
No, the honest answer is no, not yet. Frankly, we still have a struggle with trying to get our people to be active on social media. And we kind of touched on that in the very beginning. Where's that boundary you draw, on being authentic and being, controversial? Well, there's also the other side of that boundary, like being silent on social media isn't necessarily what we want either. But that is candidly one of the things we struggle with. So I'm waiting. I'll be jumping for joy the day that somebody comes to me that I've seen already, that I already, quote unquote, know them from LinkedIn or something. When they come and want to interview for a position, it'll be awesome because I'll dig into it then. But our people are great, right? But they're not really heavy onto media quite yet. And they may never be.
It's kind of funny. Something I was thinking about earlier, when we first started talking about that. Like when I first started, I didn't really know what my company was going to think about it when I first started being more active. And actually, I had a college buddy, reach out to me on LinkedIn, like, "Hey, you looking for a job?" And I was like, "No, why?" He's like, "Well, you're posting a lot more on LinkedIn now." And then I was like, "Oh no." And I kind of explained to him what I was doing with the newsletter. I was trying to kind of create a newsletter and how to market it. So I started using LinkedIn a lot more and doing that. And then just kind of the snowball started rolling with it. But I didn't really tell anybody why I was doing or what I was doing. And the president of our company reached out to me, and he was out to ask me questions. And he supported me from day one, which has been awesome. But he basically said, just don't throw our clients under the bus, don't throw the contractors under the bus, and basically what you said, don't be stupid. And I try to, sometimes you almost have to throw somebody under the bus to teach a lesson, but I really try to do it in a way where if I tell a story, you don't know if it happened 5 minutes ago or 5 years ago, right? It's like that's not the important part of what we're talking about. Like the important part is the lesson of what happened. Like I don't need to say like, Kyle Grandell screwed me yesterday, and now I'm pissed, and this is what happened, right? Like, so it's just, I don't know, but I guess just don't be stupid with it, and like it goes a long ways for you.
Yeah, man. I've tried in the past even to get some of our specialty contractors to come on to our podcast. Just, hey, let us interview. Let us ask you a few questions. And even them, like, they know me really well. I'm personal friends with a lot of our guys. They see all my stuff. You know, they all will like and share and comment and all that crap online. But the idea of, you know, getting on a mic and having a camera in your face and doing this in front of the world, they won't do it. I've had one of our team members, one of our steel guys, came on. It wasn't even on my show. It was on a friend of mine's show, on Scott Pieper's show. I think you might have coming up here. But we did a webinar type thing together on that. And that was cool, man. He loved it. He had a great time. But other than that, it's a struggle, you know, because it's the construction industry, right? We kind of talked about this last week or whenever that was, but we're very slow to adopt anything new and different in this industry. And frankly, that's a problem. But, you know, by doing this, by doing what you're doing, it helps to change those things.
It's helping do that, but it's also an opportunity for those people who do want to embrace that, I feel like, because it's not a saturated market just yet, right? Like every gym owner has a podcast. So if you're a gym owner, you're trying to start a podcast, or you're going to try to start posting on Instagram, like it's such a saturated market. But the construction industry is still it's a wild, wild west still, and there's a land grab.
Yeah. There's not a ton of shows out there. I mean, there's some, you know, that I follow and that I've seen, but there's not a lot yet. So, you know, there's no time like the present, right?
Right. Well, we're getting near the end of the time here. Was there anything you wanted to talk about that we overlooked?
No, man, I think we touched on a lot of good stuff here. It was a fun conversation. I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Appreciate you joining us, Matt. If people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
So I'm most active on LinkedIn, Matt Vetter at LinkedIn. The company is Schafer Construction. The podcast is the Construction Corner podcast. But you can find me anywhere, any of the media channels.
I'll make sure I'll link all your stuff in the show notes so people can find you easy.
I appreciate that, man.
Anything, Kyle?
No, it was great. It's awesome to meet you, Matt, and you shared a lot of good wisdom here. So,
man, this Riverside is killing me. Everybody keeps cutting out, so. Well, we'll call it there. I appreciate you guys. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks guys.